Hey, my name is Kelly Kessler. I'm the host of the podcast Rewiring Health, and I'm obsessed with helping you stop feeling burnout, living in pain, and anxious about the future. You see, for years, I felt like I was never good enough. I repeated in my head, when I accomplish this, then I'll finally be happy. And even when I accomplished it, there was always emptiness in my heart. I always put others' needs before my own. Negative thoughts ran wild in my head, and I always struggled to truly feel like I could relax and be present. Well, through my journey of healing, rewiring my brain, regulating my nervous system, and reprogramming my subconscious mind, I have recovered from an eating disorder, I have healed from chronic back pain, and I can truly be present with my two boys and feel that I am living the life I was destined to live with purpose and with joy. And I'm here to guide you along the same journey of healing. If you've ever struggled in your health and fitness journey, relied strictly on willpower, or failed just to see results, you want to stick around for this episode. I had the pleasure of speaking with Rita Jayne Trotter. Rita is a women's weight loss and health expert whose passion, work, and philosophies focus on joy factor, on self-acceptance, physical and emotional cohesion, and authentic wellness. Her foundation in health comes from being 70 pounds overweight and understanding the old adage, move more, eat less, was not focused on the root cause of her own or other women's weight problems. Anyone who knows Rita knows that she does not support diets of any kind. It may seem like an anomaly coming from a health and fitness coach in the times we're living in, but she's ever promoted is simply conscious living, and yet delivered lifetime results of herself and her clients. She's an unapologetic, vocal champion of using our common sense and uncomplicating the act of eating. The idea is to empower you to follow a healthy lifestyle as a way of life and not just when you are on a diet. Her approach is to find your body fit, happy place, not to desensitize you or kill you with a set of bone-breaking exercises. Once you learn that weight loss is very much possible without feeling overwhelmed and enjoying food freedom, there is no turning back. So you wake up, your phone is right on the table next to you, and it feels almost like a magnet. You grab the phone, and before you know it, you subconsciously open every app, scroll through social media, you're on your email, you're looking at the news headlines, and you're feeling stressed. And this is how you start your day. I can't tell you how many times I did this, and it did not serve me. It set me up to be in a whirlwind of negativity, and I was just starting my day. And that's why I created the morning guide for perfectionists. So if you struggle with negativity throughout the day, and it's even worse in the morning because you don't have a routine, this will help you tremendously. It's literally everything that I implement that has helped me start my day with the right intentions and put myself into a place of inner harmony. So grab in the link below and enjoy. Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. Very excited to be joined by Rita Trotter today. So thank you for being here, Rita.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to just jump right in because what I love is just hearing people's journeys, because that's just the most profound thing, how like life just takes you on this journey. You never know where it's going to go. Do you mind just sharing your journey and what brought you to what you do today and who you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a women's body transformation coach, and I work with women over the age of 40, essentially to not just lose fat, but create a body shape that they love, a body that they can look in the mirror and for a lot of them, for the first time ever, really accept and love it. And equally, a lot of that focuses on balancing hormones, a lot of challenges with perimenopause and menopause. And it all really stemmed from my own experience of gaining 70 pounds in weight and having no clue what to do about it. As a kid, a teenager, I really struggled with anorexia and a very poor body image, mainly because of things that kids said at school, because of, in today's world, we call it banter, but these small little flippant comments. And then as I sort of matured through my 20s, I never really thought about my weight. I didn't have to. I did all of the wrong things. I ate a lot of takeaways. I ate a lot of pizzas. I drank a lot. I stayed up late, but my body on the outside never really changed. And then I got pregnant with my first child, and suddenly 70 pounds came on. My hormones were all over the place. And when I started trying to find something that would work, I did what most women have done, and I tried every fad diet, yo-yoing. None of them were sustainable. And then I sort of looked for trainers, and everyone was either a 21-year-old, very fit young woman, which is great, but she had no clue what it was like to have kids or have hormonal imbalances, or it was a man with a bicep the same size as my leg. So again, it was quite an intimidating prospect. And I just couldn't really find anything that worked for me, my lifestyle, my time constraints, and also my level of confusion. There's a lot of people out there who are great, but they don't explain to you, okay, an egg is protein. Like, they just don't really talk to you about the basic stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where it started for me, was wanting to help women who didn't have time, didn't understand their bodies, didn't understand their hormones, and pretty much their entire life was about other people, kids, husband, family, business, clients, and there was no time for them, because that's kind of where I found myself.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such an important place to be and to help people in that category, because I mean, I can understand it. Like, before kids, like, your body feels different, and then after kids, there's so many things you're like, oh, that's different, that's not what I'm used to. And it's like that adjustment, and you're kind of like left on your own almost to kind of figure it out. And there's also that like kind of shame and blame game where you see all these like celebrities that like, oh, we lost all our weight in a week or two, and it's like, it's not reality. But to understand how to adapt to that, I just love what you do. And one thing that I love is the simplicity of it, because I think we're bombarded with information all the time. And it's like, we don't know how to take that. We get overwhelmed. And then it's like, then we put the blame on ourselves. Well, like, what's wrong with me? There's all these things that make it look simple, but it's not really. And I just love what you do, is that you take it all together and you make it a simple program and people can implement it. And I just love that.
Absolutely. Simplicity is key. So I've been asked on too many occasions that I can't count anymore, what do you get? And my response is always, well, if you work with me or any other coach worth their salt, you get results. I'm not really fussed about overcomplicated workout plans and meal plans as long as your arm, or a ton of supplements and pills and all of, because essentially we're now in such a consumer society that people want stuff to do it for them. I'll spend 10 grand on, stuff or a surgeon to do this, because I know exactly, what the materialistic stuff is going to be. But actually, when it comes to body or health in any aspect, it doesn't matter how you get there. It's about getting the result. And for me, it's about, well, rather than giving you 100 things and 99 of them won't work, but one might, let's just do one thing that has massive effect.
Yeah.
And ensure that that's the right thing for you. Because the last thing that women like us need is more things to do. I mean, your to-do list, I can guarantee everyone listening has a to-do list and they've never managed to complete it. As soon as something gets ticked off, something else goes on. So why would we want to add more and more chores and tasks and have-tos? Let's just make it about key simplicity and get a result, regardless of whether it requires just one change or 10.
Yeah, I love that. It's so crucial because again, especially as a mom and anyone who's in their 40s or 50s, whatever, like your life is just so chaotic. It's like the last thing you want is another job, where you have to like
Yeah.
have things just like a huge load put on your shoulders again. So I love that simplicity because I feel like it's very empowering when you approach it from that standpoint where you're like, okay, give me something I can do. I can see that I'm doing it. And now then you can build on that versus like, I feel like so many programs bombard you with all these changes and then it kind of backfires because you're so overwhelmed by it. So I love that concept. One thing that really struck me about you, because I read I do my research with anyone I have on, but one thing I loved is how you talk about the typical culture is move more, eat less, and that's it. And I find that puts a lot of blame on the person. Like, well, what's wrong with you? Can't you just eat less and you move more? And what I love about what you do is that you flip the script. Like you don't put the blame on the person for their inability to lose weight. You empower them to do it. So can you just talk about that, how you empower people to move past that concept it's so widely thrown in our faces?
Absolutely. So the eat less, move more idea from a scientific perspective makes sense. I get it. From an evidence, personal training, fitness trainer perspective, it makes sense. But there's one fundamental question that's being missed, which is, well, if it's that simple, why aren't people doing it? And the why is what I'm interested in. And the why is what I want to talk to people about. Because if we are sedentary for 20 out of a 24-hour day, why? If we are eating a plate of food that's, the size of our head, or, if we're eating so much food, why? If we're finding ourselves standing at the vending machine every hour, getting snacks or chips, crisps in the UK, but chips for you guys, chocolate bars, whatever it might, why? And everything that we do, like everything, is based on how we feel. So we all have sort of basic human needs, but it fundamentally comes down to a feeling, whether that's stress, anger, overwhelm, guilt, shame, fear. All of these feelings lead to choices. And often these are feelings that people don't want to feel. I've never met someone that goes, yeah, I want to feel afraid. I want to feel guilty. I want to feel angry. So what we do is, rather than dealing with the feeling, we try to distract or suppress it. And that's where sedentary lifestyle comes in. So we are really stressed at work. So what do? We sit in our chair, we stare at our computer, and we work more because we might fix the problem. Or we are really nervous about an event, or we're scared about an email we've got to write. So we distract by getting up and going to the cookie cupboard or the vending machine. So everything that no one wants to harm their body, but we do it if we are fundamentally living in an emotional state that we don't enjoy. So I always say there are three keys that really make up successful health, not just weight loss, but health. And it's strategy, story, and state. Now, the strategy is everywhere. A strategy is a diet, a fitness program. The strategy is Weight Watchers or Slimming World. There are strategies everywhere, but people don't use them. Why? Because they tell themselves a disempowering story. I can't lose weight because I've never done it, or I'm too busy, or I don't have enough money, or I've always been big boned, or my family's overweight. So we tell ourselves stories, essentially saying that biography equals destiny. And most of the stories that we tell are either disempowering or empowering based on the emotional state that we live in. So people that live in a state of passion and joy, and my favorite state, curiosity, tend to find that they eat less and move more because they're just naturally looking for the positive. They're naturally curious about their feelings. They listen to the messages. People that live in a state of overwhelm and anxiety, which unfortunately nowadays is most of society, tend to try and hide, distract, or numb the feelings, and that's where excessive food and lack of movement come in. So yes, it's fundamentally a basic key, but the reason is we need to understand why. I put on 70 pounds because I had 12-year-old girls in my head from when I was a kid saying, you're chubby, you're overweight, you're ugly. And their voices propelled me. It wasn't that I was lazy. I was just living in the wrong emotional state.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that because it's so true. But a lot of times we just try to fix everything externally, but our inside is so empty. And it's like when we talk about our inside and bring awareness to it and all those messages, like you talk about when you're 12 years old, like we all carry messages from our childhood. We have all been through things and we all carry that. But until we bring awareness to that, like, why is that true? Like, why am I holding on to this? Like, and a lot of that is that protective part of it is that like we've gone through things that maybe made us feel less safe or threatened when we were a child, and then we hold on to it because that's what our system does. Like, I'm going to protect you now, and it doesn't serve us, it's just protecting us. So I love how you do that. Is like, let's talk about the why, because that's everything. I mean, like you said, there's strategy all around, but until we know what's authentically right for us and why we are doing these behaviors, that's everything. I mean, I can attest to that with the eating disorder I had as well. It's like, the behaviors were not the issue, is why I was engaging in that. And it's with everything. We all have these dialogues that are dictating our life. Our subconscious dictates 90% of our life. So we have to change that. So I love that approach that you do. It's so crucial. It's amazing. And kind of going
Yeah.
off of that, one thing I would love for you to talk on is how do we, if we struggle with body image, if we struggle with like just that negative self-talk, how do we start to accept ourselves, like have that self-acceptance for what we look like, for what we feel, everything that's authentically us? How do we start to cultivate that self-acceptance?
So for everybody, it can be slightly different, but usually what I find is in this present moment, anybody listening, you, I, are a culmination of all of our past selves. And I don't mean past lives or anything like that. I mean our 5-year-old, 6, 7, 8, 25, 30-year-old, they all live with us. And often in a moment, we can feel something that doesn't make sense. Like, have you ever felt angry and you're like, why do I feel angry? This situation doesn't make sense for that. And it's because something's usually happened that has triggered one of those past versions of us who isn't at peace. And the 12-year-old version of me, for a long time, before I realized she had such control, a woman might say something to their child in a bar or a restaurant. I'd hear it and I'd interfere, not because the current adult me had any opinion on somebody's parenting, but the 12-year-old felt scared and attacked, and suddenly me as this grown woman was acting on the 12-year-old's trigger. And often what we need to do to start to really accept ourselves in the present day is to understand which are the key versions of us who haven't healed. We all have versions who have been hurt, and that can be from just a bullying word all the way through to abuse. There are various scales of this, but we need to put them at peace. Otherwise they just continue to tap us. Like the 21-year-old will continue to tap us saying, you're not good enough, you're ugly. The 30-year-old whose husband cheated on them, you're not attractive, you're not desirable. They continue to tap and then have a massive impact on how we react today, which is why most people struggle to be present. I've barely met anyone who truly can be present in the moment, because they've got like 50 versions of themselves all screaming and being triggered. So the first thing I would say is look back at key moments in your life that have had a negative impact on you, and really imagine, what does that version look like? What was the hair looking like? What was the environment? What did they wear? And then imagine, how did they feel in that moment? Did they feel scared? Did they feel violated? Did they feel threatened? How did that version of you feel? And then you need to give them what they need. So I always say, write a letter, as if it was your daughter, your little sister. Write a letter to that version and give them the love, give them the care, give them the peace and acceptance that they needed. And then they will be quiet and calm and still, so that you today can truly be present and accepting of your life without their trigger or interference.
Yeah, I love that. And I love how you give such an actionable step, something that you can really take. And, for anyone listening, like, do that. And it's like those little things that you may not think are a big difference make all the difference. And that's something I learned in my healing journey. I'm like, well, what's that going to do? And then you do it and you're like, oh yeah, that really does work. It really has such a profound effect on how you think. And I just love how you give such an actionable step, and to bring awareness to those. It's uncomfortable to bring awareness, but it will help you move forward. And it's like, if you want that dream life, like, what can you do now? And that's just such a great thing to do, is just start looking at the stories that you're telling yourself. So I absolutely love that suggestion. And I'm actually reading a book now. It's called Quantum Vibe, but it talks about that, how triggers are, it is a huge message of what's going on internally. So use that to bring up your energy levels and understand how you can give yourself compassion. So I love that message that you share with that. And it really is so true. Kind of going off of that, when like bringing awareness, because again, that's such a big thing, and so many people go through life just like on autopilot. They don't even think about what they're doing. And I know a big part of what you do is that conscious eating. Do you mind just talking about that? Like, how do we start to eat consciously? And I know what I love too about what you do is that you're not a diet, like you're more of like an anti-diet person. Like, let's not do something for the short term. Like, how can we do this for the long term? So I love that too. But can you kind of talk about that, why diets don't work and how conscious eating does work?
Absolutely. So the reason that we need to clarify, diets work short term.
Mhm.
They do.
Mhm.
And the reason that the diet industry is so successful is that people nowadays want things now.
Mhm.
I don't know what it's like in the States, but here we've got like our tube system, like the metro, like the underground system. If they have to wait more than 1 minute for a train, they're angry. Is this happening? Amazon Prime, if it doesn't get delivered the very next day, I want a refund, I want to cancel, right? So
Same
we are
here.
in a society where we want things instantly. Domino's Pizza. Do you have Domino's in
We
the States?
do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so Domino's made itself one of the biggest pizza takeaway companies across the planet for one simple reason. It was a tiny, tiny little local place. It wasn't doing very well. And then the owner said, okay, I'll deliver your pizza in less than 30 minutes. If I don't, you get it for free.
Mhm.
As soon as he realized that he could tap into the convenience speed element, Domino's has never looked back, and it's now huge. So we want things now, now, now. But I would always ask anyone listening, if it's taken 20 years to put the weight on, do you really expect it to come off in 20 seconds and stay off? No. There are underlying habits and behaviors that have made your body manifest and your choices happen. The weight has come on because of habits that need to be shifted. So the diet industry doesn't work as a long term, because it essentially says, let's restrict everything. You're going to be bored, you're going to be hungry. And eventually we then feel so sort of tired of constraining ourselves that we go the opposite direction. So we go all in to then all out. Right. Well, now I've had a chocolate bar. I've ruined the quote unquote diet. I'll have another, and then I'll have the takeaway and a bottle of wine, and I'll just start again on Monday. Oh, well, it's almost the end of the month. I'll start again on the 1st, and so on. Conscious eating is essentially the awareness of why you're doing, what you're eating, and what's the reason. So even when I'm training for a fitness competition and I have a six-pack and, all of the muscles on show, I'll still have a chocolate bar or a pizza. That doesn't make you put on weight. It's the guilt that I've now eaten something that is bad that then causes excessive eating that then causes the problem. So conscious eating is just being aware of, why am I eating it? It's okay. All food is nutrition. All food is good. And as long as I'm not doing it to mask an emotion, and I'm doing it just because in this moment it's pleasurable and I can move on, great. That's how you live a healthy life and maintain a healthy weight. It's not by never having sugar again. It's by having it consciously, enjoying it in the moment and moving on, not dwelling on it for the next 48 hours of your life. So I'd always say, every time you pick up anything, whether it's grilled chicken or McDonald's, just think in your mind, why? Am I doing this to hide something, to mask something, to numb something, even boredom? The number of women who are bored out of their mind at work, and so they eat to alleviate the boredom. If you're doing it through boredom, what could you do that would alleviate the boredom, that would serve you, that wouldn't be food? If you are angry and you're eating because of that, what could you do to understand that message? Because any feeling is telling us to do one of two things: change your behavior or change your belief. So if I feel angry, right, do I need to change my behavior in this moment? Usually it's because I need to change my belief about what somebody else is doing or why they're doing it. So as long as we start to consciously be aware of why we're eating, it's much easier to stay in control of it rather than it being reaction. Most of us eat out of reaction.
Yeah. So many amazing things you just said there. The one thing I love that you said is how it's like, how that culture is that, when you start dieting, it's like that restriction, and then you like can't live like that forever because it's draining. And that's what willpower is. It's like willpower will drain you if you feel like you have to use strictly willpower all the time. Like, it's good to get you going, but it's not good long term because it does take energy to use willpower. So when you start bringing in like that, like love for yourself and that compassion for yourself, and not feeling like you're coming down on yourself for every single thing you put in your mouth, like, I love that, because again, like, we are our own worst critics. And then once we start getting into those patterns of like self-loathing, like, we're setting ourselves up for just more anguish down the road. And so I love that switch of like, okay, how can we do this and still enjoy the chocolate bar? Like you're saying, it's like, especially when you're working on a competition, it's like, that's a very strict period, but you can still give yourself grace to allow yourself to have that and then not punish yourself for it. So I love that. And one thing too that really stuck out to me was that how you talk about, we use food to fill those emotional voids, and like, that self-numbing and the coping mechanisms. And it's like, we all have them to some extent, but like, what are you using it for? And it is, for some people it is food, for some people it's alcohol, for some people it's scrolling through social media, for some people it's TV. So it's like being aware of like, how are you using these? And all those are okay, but what's the purpose for it? So very, very true, just to bring awareness to that and have that in your daily routine of like, why are you doing that? So I love that, because it's all like small little things. Like, we started out with simplicity. It's all what you talk about. These are little simple things that change just the tiniest thing, but change everything for the big picture. So I love that. It's amazing. Do you mind sharing, because I always love, stories are the biggest thing. Do you mind sharing a story of someone who you worked with who maybe came to you struggling and went through those like yo-yo dieting and, just coming down on themselves, very negative about themselves, and then really saw a huge life change in inside and out? Do you mind just sharing something that someone you've helped in that way?
Yeah, of course. So, there's so many women who are pretty much in that situation, but I guess one client that comes to mind is Emily. So Emily was 45. She had two teenage children, both of whom disabled, so need full-time care. We're talking about, two 15-year-old, well, 13 and 15. And she was also the vice president of an international bank. So, not a small job. And she had struggled for years with weight, pretty much since her first child, so 15 years. Mainly because when you're trying to juggle a job like that, two children that at this stage, for most people, those kids should be completely independent. They shouldn't really need, that's when we say this is my time, right? For her, that wasn't her time. And she went on a holiday to Dubai with her husband. And it should have been this beautiful getaway. They managed to get carers in, and it should have been just a week of pure bliss. And all she did for an entire week was look at other women and compare herself and resent it. She would look around and say, well, they've got kids. Why do they look like that and I don't? Or look at her. I wonder if she's got children. I wonder if she looks like that. And that was, so she completely missed a holiday. She spent thousands on holiday and wasn't even there mentally. And that's when, and one of the biggest things that we had to work on, well, there were so many, but the very first key was there's no such thing as I don't have time to move. Because most people go, well, I don't have an hour to go to the gym, or I don't have 2 hours to go and play sports or whatever it might be. Well, I said, after this was our very first call, do you have 5 minutes? And she went, well, I've got 10 minutes between this and my next meeting. I said, all right, what can you do in 10 minutes? I said, what can you do? And so she did like a little 10-minute YouTube dance video thing. And that was probably the start of her understanding that 10 minutes is all you need to get momentum, right? Because if you imagine like Indiana Jones and the big ball, the ball, to get it to move takes a lot of effort, but once it's going, it's going and it's easy. So it's like, have you got 5 minutes? Have you got 3 minutes to just do something? And then in terms of the comparison, it was actually about, at this point, realizing that it wasn't her 45-year-old self, again, that was sort of comparing. It was the words of her mother. So her mother had always said, oh, well, your friends are slim, your sister is slim. So a lot of the women I work with, I guess not surprisingly, are twins. And they've been compared with their sister throughout their life. And they are, quote unquote, the big one, or the jolly one, or the chubby one. And again, so she was hearing these words. She had thoughts saying, you're not as slim as her. And I said, well, whose voice is it? Is it yours? And she went, I guess. And I was like, okay, let's take it back. When was the first time you can remember hearing those words? And it was her mother at the age of 7. So one of the biggest challenges mentally that we overcame was understanding that all of these beliefs that you have, these negative self-talks, aren't yours. They're words from somebody else that you've taken on. So guess what? Give it back. Just give it. They're not your words. They're not your beliefs. They're somebody else's that you've adopted. Give it back and fill it with your words. So there were lots of things that we changed, but the just 5 minutes and whose words are they were probably the two things that she resonated with. And in just 3 months, she lost, in pounds, it was like 28 pounds in 3 months, and then continued with all the tools to lose the rest of her weight. I think it was another 40 pounds in the next 6 months. And she's now, sustaining it with ease, just because we looked at those fundamentals.
Wow, that's everything. And I love that 5 minutes, because especially when you're like a high achiever, you're trying to do so many things, you think like it's all or nothing. I either do an hour or I do nothing. And just bringing it back like 5 minutes, it's so true. We can all find 5 minutes in our day. And to see those results and just changing those little things, but that makes all the difference. And I love that. And just, sharing that story. Thank you for sharing that, because it's like hearing that. And for anyone listening, like when you hear those stories, you're like, okay, it is doable. It's possible. Like everyone is empowered enough to do that. You just have to kind of find that inner strength in yourself. And it's so true to stop comparing yourself and criticizing yourself. And how can we start changing those C's that we use to compassion? Yeah, I just love that. Thank you for sharing that. And kind of just wrapping up here, do you, for someone who wanted to like work with you and learn more about what you do, where can they find you?
So our website is thehealthandfitnesscoach.com. I'm on social media, so the Health and Fitness Coach or Rita Trotter. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, but probably the best place to go is the website first. I will give people a breakdown of different programs, different client stories. Emily's on there as well. So, go and have a little look around, and you can always email us as well, which is support at thehealthandfitnesscoach.co.uk. Even if it's just to ask a question or guidance, I'm always happy to have a chat.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll put everything in the show notes too for anyone listening so they can find you. And also Rita has a podcast too. So definitely check out her podcast as well. So if you want to just talk about your podcast quickly.
Yeah, of course. So we have the Health Collective, which is mainly aimed at sort of women in careers and business, and really just looking at various different tips. Obviously, Kelly, you're a fantastic guest talking about our sort of nervous system. And it's just really helping women understand the various different aspects of life that go into creating an extraordinary one, not just in body, but in energy, in focus, in mindset. So yeah, the Health Collective.
Yeah, great. So definitely check that out. It's a great podcast. You have so many amazing guests, and I just love what you share. And it's just that empowering message. Again, everything that you've talked about today, it's like, hopefully anyone listening to this, you take away that that you are so worthy, and you're not stuck. That's a big thing. You're not stuck where you are. You can always change. And if you feel like you've been going through this cycle of just like, quote unquote, failing yourself, maybe if you start working the inside out, that's where that true key is to creating the change that you love and that you want in your life. So thank you for sharing everything that you share, because it's just such an important message. It's something I wish I heard 20 years ago, because I was that person. And so to understand that we have to start loving ourselves and giving ourselves compassion is such a better way than to come down on ourselves for what we aren't. So thank you, Rita.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone for listening. And yeah, hopefully together we've added some value to at least one person's life.
Absolutely. I guarantee that. And thank you again, same for everyone for listening. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast, and please share any reviews or comments you have about this episode. So thank you very much. Thank you for spending your precious time to listen to this episode of Rewiring Health. My mission is to inspire hope and healing through science-backed practices. If you found value in this, please share with 3 people and leave a review. By doing so, this message can be spread to those who need to hear it most. Also, to get updates on the most recent episodes, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being part of this community, and I am forever grateful for you.